When you pull out your phone and check your bank account and see that you have $100,000 saved up, that completely shifts your entire mindset. You're no longer going to have a slavery mentality. That sounds a bit too harsh, but it is true. Most people, I would say more than 90% of the entire population, stick to their jobs not because they're so in love with their jobs, but because they are afraid of the consequences. You lose your job, you won't be able to make your mortgage payments, that will ruin your credit score, that will make it harder to borrow money. It's like a domino effect that destroys your entire life one by one. And all of that happened because you lost your job. Now, imagine for a moment that if you quit, or God forbid, lose your job, but you would not face the same consequences. Wouldn't it be that scary to lose your job? Not really, because paying your basic bills is no longer the question. The question is, what would you want to do next? Maybe you actually want to stick to your job because you love it, but you get the point. $100,000 is not much of a money. That's how much you would spend in a year living in any major city. But do you see what kind of a difference it makes in your mentality, in the way you think, when you know that you're not going to end up in the streets should everything goes wrong? Saving your first $100,000 is the hardest thing. Like going from $0 to $100,000 is much more difficult than going from $100,000 to $1 million. Once you get the dice rolling, it gets much easier. The problem is that when you have set up your life in such a way that when every penny that comes in has to go somewhere, then you're in trouble. Like I know people that if their paycheck is delayed for a few days, then you would be in trouble because the next day they will receive a phone call from their landlord. What's happening? Why hasn't rent been paid yet? Nobody wants to ruin their reputation. That could make it much more difficult to rent a place in the future, for example. Investing your first money is also not the best idea. I'm not saying that you should not invest long term. You should, but not your first money. Not the money that could give you the financial freedom. Not the money that would give you peace of mind and let you decide what's best for you and not stick into something just because you can't afford to keep paying your bills. If you make $70,000 after taxes, that will make it a little less than $6,000 per month. If you manage to save 20% of that money, which is, to be honest, way more than most people can, we're going to assume that you're super disciplined and you can make it. That's $14,000 a year, which means you need more than 7 years to save that much money. To be honest, that's a pretty long time. It's way easier to get a side hustle and save whatever you make from that side hustle. The problem with wealth is that it's just so hard to make money when you don't have money. It's actually true that you need money to make money. When we say that you could be making 7% a year, look at your bank account and you have $200. At 7% and $200 is $14. What can $14 get you? 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks at best. Even if you save up $20,000, 7% and $20,000 is $1,400 a year, which would barely cover your rent at best. And you're not even guaranteed to make 7%. You might be making that much money over the course of 20 years if you average it up, and it could be down at any given year. Take 2022. The entire market is down. So investing doesn't make sense at this point unless you're ready to invest and forget about it. But what if Bill Gates got an offer to make 7% a year? What do you think it means for him? He's got money, many billions. If he puts just $1 billion into that business, that is $70 million. Let's take out taxes and other expenses. That would amount to around $50 million. I'm not sure how much Bill Gates spends per month, but $50 million will get him much more than just 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks. Even if he's not going to make any money on that particular year, that is not going to in any way drag him down. He can wait another year or 2 or even 3. He can spend more on that business to make it happen. That's why a lot of business people leverage their positions. If you're certain that you would definitely make money out of this deal, then it's much more convenient to borrow money even if you have to pay some interest to turn the small deal into a big deal. That's what Michael Burry did, by the way. When he knew that the housing market is about to crash, he borrowed as much as he could. When startups find out that they have a working business model, all they do is just keep borrowing as much money as they can to scale their operations, even if it's just a 10% return. When you hear the news that Buffett made $10 billion this year, that's like 10% out of $100 billion net worth. That's like making $10 on $100. Of course, investing $100 billion is way more difficult than investing just $100, but you get the point. But it has its own share of risks, of course, like if your deal doesn't work out, what happens next? You could be losing your entire company. If you ruin your credit score and no one will lend you money again, you could lose all of your assets and end up in the streets. It has its own share of risks. That's why it is not like a joke. You should be aware of the kind of risk that you are taking. So the term the rich keep getting richer and the poor poorer is true. That's how capitalism works. It can't be otherwise. Because your income will never rise as fast as inflation, and your needs as you grow up. You move to a bigger house that's more expensive, it is really difficult to move back to renting a room. You got married, you got extra expenses. You can't simply back down unless you have a good reason. You're a father now. Welcome to a lifelong financial commitment. So you're going to get poorer as you age up, even though you might be making more money. But if you have got a small loan of $1 million from your parents, that would generate 5% annually. And if you don't touch it and let it keep growing, you will keep getting richer regardless. That's why the first $100,000 is that breaking point that will either capitulate you towards financial freedom or keep you struggling financially, most likely for the rest of your life. And it also depends on when you're going to make that $100,000. If you can achieve that in your 20s, you've done yourself a great favor. But if you achieve it in your 50s, for example, then that's not going to be as advantageous as making it in your 20s, since you will have lived most of your life, assuming you will have an average life expectancy of 77 years. I can say that from my personal experience. When I got to the point where I was confident that no matter what happens, I can at least not work for an entire year and I will be fine. My entire perspective on life changed. I stopped looking for short term and focused on long term. If you have the discipline to go to $100,000, you will have the discipline to go to $1 million. That's not always the case, but that's usually what happens. The only thing that I would strongly advise you to keep in mind is that it is not forever. It's temporary. It's like a journey to go to somewhere that is better than when you are now. If you're afraid of taking plane like me, then you force yourself to be a little bit patient because you know that once you reach that destination, you're going to feel far better. Focus on that destination. Whenever you feel like you're about to give up, imagine how life would be once you get there. And if you don't get there, imagine how horrible life will be farther if you do not hit that milestone. I wish you all the best. You can let me know in the comments below how do you plan to hit your first $100,000. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.